All right, everyone. Welcome to the midweek edition of Ball State of the Union. It is Wednesday, October 2nd. Today, we're going to be looking at a quick preview of the Western Michigan game. Nothing too in depth, just a quick little look at it. We're going to go ahead and take another glance at the 2024 Ball State Hall of Fame class, kind of who's in it. And then I'm going to give my ideas of who potentially could be in the class next year or years to come. Just people who aren't in the Hall of Fame yet, whether they haven't been eligible yet or they just now are and looking to get in. And then we're going to take some fan calls at the end. So let's get into it. Let's not waste any more time. All right. Again, welcome, Ball State of the Union. Let's not waste any time. Let's get right into Western Michigan. What are we seeing with Western Michigan right now? Okay, similar records, both 1-3. Home game, obviously nice. So if you guys are in the area or planning to be in the area, go ahead and go out to the game this weekend. It's always a fun time, regardless of the state of the team. It's fun to, especially if you're an alumni, to kind of go back and get a chance to enjoy seeing your college football team play. Obviously, when they're better, that's always nice and appreciated. But not necessarily the case right now. So, but yeah, if you're in the area, go ahead and check it out. Ball State is currently what's at plus 9.5. I don't even know where to go with this team anymore. So I'm not necessarily going to even worry about giving out predictions for that. If you really want one, whatever it says the over is, go ahead and take that because Ball State defense can't stop anybody, and our offense, when we're playing like opponents, like a Central Michigan or Missouri State, can move the ball and score pretty well. So that's probably the safer bet, but I don't know what to expect, so I'm staying away from picking the actual game. But I want to emphasize, although the last 3 weeks, have been pretty abysmal and pretty sad to watch, we have only played one MAC game so far. So the MAC, everything within the MAC, pretty much within our grasp, is still alive. Barring at this point Central Michigan pretty much going undefeated. We can still pretty much be in the driver's seat, but it's going to take a big, quick turnaround effort. So if we had that in us, we're going to have to get to it now because once you start, falling 0-2 in the MAC, and then you're having tougher games, on the schedule coming up, it's going to be a hard hole to climb out of. So try not to be super negative, although it's pretty easy to be right now. But if we want to keep it as positive as we can, we still have a chance technically in the MAC. So let's get out and support the team if you're in the area, and if you're watching the game, send me a picture on social media somewhere on Twitter or Facebook, or you can text the number that we have and show me where you're watching the game at. It's kind of fun to see where people are watching from. So I'll be watching from South Florida. That's where I live. But I'd love to see where everyone else is kind of watching from. So that's basically all I have for the Western Michigan game. Again, I'm not going to get super too in depth with it. But another thing going on this weekend is we have the now annual Ball State Hall of Fame class of 2024. And so obviously how you can get into the Hall of Fame, I was looking up the credentials earlier today because kind of curious as what that was. And so you had to be 10 years removed from the university. So whether you graduated or, you just left or whatever the deal was, you had to be 10 years removed. And you had to letter, I believe, at least twice. And so here's kind of the class that we've come up with for this year. And this, I'm 10 years removed from the university just about as well. So, if someone wants to put me in the Hall of Fame, I'm technically, as a member of the men's volleyball team, unofficially have the highest serving percentage in NCAA history. Unofficial stat, but it is technically an unofficial stat. So I'll be waiting my call for next year. But anyways, so this is the class we've come up with this year, obviously highlighted by Keith Winning, who was the quarterback for much of the time when I was in school. So, Keith and those teams, the 2012, 2013 teams, really kind of helped me fall in love with Ball State football during my time at school there. And so, it was only a matter of time till he's going to get in. Hopefully a handful of guys from those teams get in. Sean Baker as well. He was there just my freshman year. But, it was fun watching those guys and girls. Jenny Gilbert being on the softball team, she was there when I was there as well. So pretty cool to see. Yeah, a great honor for them. Congratulations to all those who are getting put into the Hall of Fame this year. Maybe I'll join you one day. Who knows? But that kind of got me thinking and looking at, you know, who is in the Hall of Fame already and who is not and who should be. And so I kind of came up with a quick little class that I think maybe could be, potentially on the docket for the 2025 year. So a couple notes. The class technically I have here is broken up into kind of two categories. The first two people, I believe, based on the criteria, are not eligible yet, but will be eligible next year. And then the other three are, or excuse me, other four are going to be people who are already eligible right now, but aren't in by themselves. There's a couple people that are in on specific teams that got inducted, but I think their contributions to the athletic department, the individual sports program, and the school as a whole, warrants them kind of making it as themselves instead of just being, put in on the team. So that's kind of the criteria I tried to go off when I was working on this list. And obviously this is going to be like a really loaded class I'm about to give you. And I understand that they like to, probably save some bigger names, for different years so that, you can have a little bit more notoriety and star power. Because again, nothing against, some of the people on the non-revenue sports. Again, I played on a non-revenue sport on the men's volleyball team, but it just, they're not as well known, and they're, the fan bases aren't there as big. And so, they kind of maybe like to hold some of these names aside so that they can kind of add them to the classes later, or at least that's what I would do if I was them. So, kind of without further ado, let's get into it. And these are going to be the two names that I have here that I believe are going to be eligible for the first time this upcoming year. And so the first one is a friend of mine from college. I had class with him a couple of different times. We had some group projects, but then he also ended up being the all-time leader in rushing yards and touchdowns for Ball State football, and that's going to be Jawan Edwards. Like I said, all-time leader in rushing yards, 4,558 yards. All-time leader in rushing touchdowns, 51 touchdowns. All-time scoring leader, which is can be kind of rare for a non-kicker to have one of those records, 306 points. He had a handful of wins in school over Power 5 schools. He beat Indiana twice, was on the team when they beat South Florida, who was a Power 5 team at the time. Obviously, he's not now, but. And then he was, the player of the game against Virginia when they won their only, game against an ACC team in school history, 155 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's currently third in all-purpose yards as well. And, with some of these records that I just read, it's got me thinking in the current day and age of, college football at a school like Ball State, Juwan's probably going to hold these records, maybe forever at this point until some big changes are made. Because, if someone has years, like he did in 2012 and 2013, he's gone. We saw with Carson Steele, he had some big years and, someone came in and swooped him up because they're allowed to do that now. You don't have to sit out a year. They don't have to waste a year, in their prime, really. So, yeah, Juwan, you could be sitting on these records for a long time. And so, like I said, yeah, he was a friend of mine in school. Very happy for all the success he had. He got a chance to, kind of bounce around in the NFL for a little while trying to, pursue his dreams. So every time I see Juwan, I always go ahead and talk to him. But, Juwan, for as great of a player as you are at Ball State and as wonderful, as a guy you were in college, I'll never let you let this down. Boom. We'll play that again. So if you aren't familiar, this was from 2011. That was when Ball State, we went on the road at number 1 Oklahoma. I think was the first time at that time when we had ever played a number 1 ranked team in the country. And so Juwan was a freshman, as was I that year, and we had English class together. And I let him hear it when we got to class that Monday after this hit. Yeah. So again, I'm just giving Juwan a hard time here. Again, he's a friend of mine. So congrats to your success. And I have no doubt, if not next year, before too long, you're going to be the headliner in one of these Ball State Hall of Fame classes. So that is our first inductee. So our second inductee is going to be one maybe not known by as many, by as many people. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call here. By as many people, but he has no doubt had a indelible mark left on the Ball State basically football program, and that's going to be our next inductee, and that's going to be Tex Ritter. Now I add Tex here because based on what they said, you have to be 10 years removed. So he would have retired in 2014. Now, I don't know if that applies for non-student athletes. If it doesn't, then shame on you, Ball State, for not having him in here already. But I'm just going to give you the benefit of the doubt here and say that that's kind of the rule. And so we're going to go Tex Ritter. So again, head equipment manager for Ball State football, 29 years. He worked in that with that program for 29 years, over 300 games. He was on the sideline. And so Tex's job, he would have been responsible for everything you see a player or coach wearing or using during a game. So helmets, shoulder pads, cleats, pants, jerseys, footballs, coaches, polos, hats, shorts. If it starts raining, they need rain gear, their headsets that they use, everything, getting it to and from the games, using it at practice. Late notice with bowl games. He worked in 7 bowl games, basically every bowl game we'd ever played up to that point. Worked under 5 different coaching staffs. And, basically he's a link. He basically links, 29 years, almost 3 decades worth of people together with the program. And so, again, if those rules don't apply to him, then again, he should have been in this Hall of Fame class a long time ago. But if they do, then next year, theoretically, or this year would be when he would go in. And again, I understand they put teams in, so he's technically in with teams already. But Tex is way more important and needs his own spot. And also Ball State. On the side note here, let's go ahead and figure out how to get the equipment room at the football facility named after him. Let's get his name put up there, on the door, above the sliding window that comes up. It should be the Tex Ritter equipment room for here on forever. So if we need to raise some money to do that, let me know. I got a bunch of people in the student equipment managers through the years that might be willing to help out and figure out how we have to do that. But that should be done too. So Tex Ritter, my next inductee in the 2025 Ball State Hall of Fame class. Okay, so now we're going to go to people who are technically, I believe, already eligible. And now we're going to go outside of football. Now, again, this is going to be very football and, probably primarily men's basketball focused because of the sports that I, follow and care about the most. Also, I played in men's volleyball. So maybe at some point I'll just put all my friends in, who knows. But so obviously there's probably tons of other people who are very well deserving from those other programs, but I just don't follow them as closely. So that's kind of where we're at with that. But another person who was in school when I was there, and that's going to be Jared Jones from the men's basketball team. Now, Jared, he was a 4-year starter. He is, top 10 in a lot of categories throughout men's basketball's history. He's number 6 all-time in career points with 1,623. 3rd all-time in career rebounds, 981 rebounds, just shy of 1,000 basically. 5th all-time in career blocks. He's a MAC freshman of the year in 2009, 2-time all-MAC player, first team in 2010, and second team in 2012. Interesting stat I saw as well when I was looking into this. Excuse me. He was the leading scorer and leading rebounder all 4 years when he was there, which I thought was kind of impressive. Maybe a reason why Jared is kind of, forgotten a little bit more than I think maybe he deserves is that I don't necessarily think that they had very much success while he was there. We really hadn't had very much success in about 20 years, but specifically in that time frame. So again, if you're, top 5 and top 10 in a lot of major categories, especially as a big man at Ball State, I believe you should have a spot in here. So especially since otherwise it's basically going to be a forgotten era of Ball State basketball. And, I just don't want that to happen. I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. So Jared Jones is my next inductee into the 2025 Hall of Fame class. Okay, so now we're going to get into a few more big names from the football program. Now, again, let me preface this by saying I understand that they put the 2008 Hall of Fame or 2008 team in the Hall of Fame, which again, that whole team deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. It basically put Ball State sports, on the map, on the national stage from when, sports expansion got really big and, people were easily to readily consume it. So, but that doesn't happen That 2008 season doesn't happen if the success from 2007 doesn't roll over, and then obviously what happened in 2008. But no, that happens without this man, and that's Dante Love. So he was a pivotal player in the 2008 season, which again, for those who don't know, Ball State went 12-0 in the regular season in 2008. Unfortunately for Dante, he had a very serious neck injury early in the season against Indiana, and his playing career was over from that day. And if that hadn't have happened, I believe at the time, I think it was the third or fourth game, he was leading the country in receiving yards a game. At 144 receiving yards a game. He would have been an All American for us. He would definitely be first in all time all-purpose yards. I think he's second. He's second right now by he's behind Justin Hall by like 22 yards. But if he had 8, let's see, they played the MAC title game and they played a bowl game. So if he would have basically had 10 more games that he could have added and padded those stats. He was a receiver, he was returning kicks. He would have crushed that. That record would have never been touched. Not even close. And so, yeah, you can't think about greatness with Ball State football and not think about Dante Love. And so, I think he deserves to be in. He set a season all-purpose yards record with almost 3,000 or 2,690, and he actually had 266 kickoff yards and return yards in one game against Central Michigan in 2007. So yeah, Dante Love was a beast. He was going to continue to be a beast if he didn't get hurt, and so for that, I think he deserves his own spot in the Hall of Fame outside of just being in on the 2008 team. Similarly, well, I can't talk. In a similar vein, we're going to look at Michael Lewis next. Also, I think deserves his own spot in the Ball State Hall of Fame. Could be the class of 2025 if you ask me, but all-time single season rushing record, 1,736 yards and 22 touchdowns, and he had 11 100-yard games. Let me repeat that. He had 11 100-yard games in that 2008 season. And, you reference that Indiana game when Dante Love unfortunately had his career ended. For Michael Lewis, he's the MVP of that game for them against Indiana. It was the first win ever against a FBS team, and he had 166 yards and 4 touchdowns. So going into the 2009 season, the next year, of course, he was a watch member for the Doak Walker and Walter Camp awards, and he actually in 2009 had a 300-yard rushing game against Eastern Michigan. So, coming in virtually top 10 and probably top 5 in pretty much every rushing category at Ball State. I think Michael Lewis definitely deserves his own spot in the Hall of Fame outside of just being in on the 2008 team. And lastly, the reason our last member of the 2025 Hall of Fame class, I think he is not in the Hall of Fame class yet because he is still playing in the NFL, and that is our good friend Willie Snead. So again, I was in school with Juwan Edwards. I was in with Keith Wenning, and so obviously on those teams we had Willie Snead as well. Best receiving season in school history in 2013. He had 1,500 receiving yards, 15 touchdowns, and he had 9 100-yard games. And those are all, first all time for single season receiving, categories at Ball State. He's a top 3 all time receiving leader in yards in 2,991. You couldn't get 9 more yards. Willie, what the heck? And second in touchdowns. So he had a great catch that went ahead and gave us a lead against University of South Florida in 2012, and that ended up being the first, at the time, Power 5 win that was not Indiana University. Obviously, South Florida is not a Power 5 team anymore. But we got that clip real quick. You can see this was the go-ahead. Keith Wenning, I was in the stands today. Amazing catch, about a minute left in the game. 1 foot down, boom, Ball State wins, beats the then Power 5 University of South Florida. Love to see it. Willie Snead, amazing player. 2-time first-team All-MAC member in 2012 and 2013. And Yeah, I think the reason that he's not in the Hall of Fame just yet is because he's still playing in the NFL, and I think they would love for him to come back and accept that honor whenever they decide to bestow that on him. So that is looking back. That is going to be the Hall of Fame class that I am suggesting for 2025. That's going to be Juwan Edwards, running back, football program; Tex Ritter, equipment manager program, football program, 29 years; Jared Jones, men's basketball; Dante Love, Michael Lewis, and Willie Snead, all for the football team. Now, we're going to get into a couple of fan call-ins. So we had a couple fan calls. And so the first one is going to come from our friend on Twitter. He runs a Twitter account called Ball State Football Talk. So if you haven't already, go ahead and please give him a follow. I'm going to throw his Twitter logo and name on the screen, and then we'll listen to see what he has to say.
Ball State Football Talk on Twitter or X. I was just calling in to say, man, thanks for doing the YouTube show. We need more outlets, more media. One of my least favorite things about following Ball State football is how hard it is to get more information on the team. So I appreciate you doing the show. It does, get some more eyeballs on the team. It is nice to have a bit more of a community. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you for that and tell Cards fans keep their heads up. I think we went through the toughest part of the schedule. First 4 games I only had us 2-2. At 1-3, I mean, I know the games are ugly, but we're not far off from what would have been best case scenario, even if we did put up a good fight against Miami and JMU. These next 2 games are crucial. I don't think we're going to win against Vanderbilt, obviously, but there is a chance that we could turn it around a little bit. Just last year, we did start off really slow, too, and it wasn't until we moved in Kyle Kelly that things kind of turned around. So I just want to encourage everybody to keep their heads up. I know it's a tough time right now, but things could get better. So chirp, chirp. Thanks.
Yeah, so thanks again for the call in. Again, Ball State Football Talk. So that's at Ball State FB Talk on Twitter or X, whatever you prefer to call it. So yeah, first thing, I agree. That's kind of the reason why I decided to start this show. Ball State Sports Link and some of the Ball State accounts do a wonderful job, and they have great production value and do awesome job of giving information out to people. But the problem is it's basically the only avenue that fans have a way to get together and talk about or hear about their team, and it's produced by the school. And so I wanted to do this for a long time to make sure that the fans had kind of a fan produced point of view that you can see, because you can get on and talk about things that the school might not like necessarily as much. And so that's kind of why I decided to do that. So I'm not necessarily going to be a reporter, so I don't know how much. I'm not really going to be breaking news, or at least I'm not really planning on breaking news or anything like that. So it's going to basically be more my thoughts and opinions on things that are coming out. But that's kind of why. So yeah, appreciate your support. And yeah, I agree with you. Like I talked about a little bit earlier at the beginning of the show, we are through what I think is probably the toughest part of the schedule. Is a very hard non-conference schedule. And so, the season, while it looks bleak right now, it's not dead by any means. We very much have, a chance to compete in the MAC. It's just going to basically come down to if we're able to do it or not. So thank you again. Yeah, it's not done yet, but it's not looking good. So let's get to our second and final call. This is from one of my teammates during my time at Ball State. Former All-American on the men's volleyball team. This is going to be my friend Kevin Owens. And you'll notice by this picture, if you remember the big Ball State Northern Illinois game in 2013, the game in DeKalb. It was one of those midweek Maction games, and my friend Kevin went to the game, and he had this sign that got him on TV, and got him some notoriety for a couple days online. So that's the picture I chose to put with his voicemail he left. So let's listen and see what Kevin has to say.
My Claw, this is Kevin Powens calling in from New York. Gotta say, it's a bit sad to watch the Cardinals play the way they did yesterday. I don't have a specific question except how did we get here? Like 10 years ago, when we were in Muncie, we had a football team to be proud of. Has the NIL landscape shifted things that much that schools in the MAC just can't compete that way. I just have a hard time feeling like JMU and the like aren't in the same arena in terms of funding and access to NIL money. So, yeah, I guess that's my big question for the week. Thanks, buddy. See you later.
Johnny Claus.
Oops, sorry about replay, Kevin. I can't give you that much extra airtime there. Yeah, when we were in school, yeah, my 4 years there, 3 winning seasons, 2 bowl appearances, obviously no wins, but yeah, better days. The better days, they're behind us right now. Hopefully we have better days in the future. But yeah, Kevin, NIL really has changed the game that much. It doesn't seem like we are doing a ton with NIL. And really, honestly, we can, stop beating around the bush and stop calling it NIL if we want to, and just kind of call it pay for play at this point. That's basically what it is. It's not really what the name, image, and likeness that we originally had in mind. It's basically just turned into pretty much paying people directly. So yeah, we just don't have the money to do it. We're not really trying to get the money to do it from anything I've seen because, again, I referenced in the last show, I was on the men's volleyball team. I can't do this again. I was a student manager for the football team, and I'm an alumni of the university. So 3 different avenues where people could, reach out to me, to get money or donate or support or anything like that. I never hear anything from anybody. So, that kind of is a microcosm of probably how everything's being operated. So I did recently join the Cardinal Varsity Club. So, maybe I'll get some more insider information on that. But yeah, it's tough. And, on the JMU front, yeah, they probably are, a lot further ahead of us NIL wise. I mean, if you look at the state of their football program, they transitioned up to FBS last year. I think they did end up playing in a bowl game. I know they technically weren't supposed to because of you have like a bowl restriction in your first couple of years or first year, but I think they needed an extra team basically. So they ended up playing in a bowl game. Their men's basketball team made the NCAA tournament last year as well. I think, had a 12-5 upset over Wisconsin. And so, they got money flowing in. They got a new football stadium. They're selling out games. Yeah, they're in a much better spot than we are. And basically the way around that is raise more money and get quality players and get quality coaches in and win games. Basically winning games is going to cure everything. So if we can figure out a way to win games, then this should all kind of take care of itself. But I think NIL is the biggest issue facing Ball State right now. And unfortunately, until there's some action on the end of the university, I don't know that we're going to get out of it. And so hopefully when big changes come and, the next 5-10 years, hopefully we don't get left behind, because if we do, it might be for good. So that is going to go ahead and wrap up this edition of Ball State of the Union. Thank you again to everybody who contributed and called in. If you would like to contribute or call in, you can certainly do so. And you are able to send us a voicemail. You're able to send us a text with, a picture or video message, kind of whatever you want to do. We will review it and we will go ahead and put it on the show. And again, that phone number is 317-426-6341. That is 317-426-6341. And we will go ahead and put any of those voicemails or text or pictures or video calls, anything we get, we'll put it on the show, as long as it's, not too crazy. So show us where you're watching the game this week. Best of luck, Ball State fans. Chirp, chirp. And I will be back with you guys. Pardon me. Got a kind of cough. I'll be back with you after the game this weekend against Western Michigan, hopefully celebrating a win. Who knows? We'll find out later. Chirp, chirp. I'll talk to you then.